Good morning, everyone. I'm just eating a little soup because my throat is I'm just gonna wait a little bit um, because people are coming in, so I don't want to start until there's a critical mass of people in the room. Oh, y'all are not just starting recording. I already did that. Okay, I'm going to still just about 10 people. I'm going to try to just give them about maybe 2 or 3 more minutes, and then I'm going to go ahead and get started. That way, people have had 5 minutes to get here or to turn on, to come in. Okay, there's a few more people just came in, so I'm still going to just, again, try to hold out another minute or so, and then I'll get started. Okay, good morning, everyone. The time now is 12:35, so I'm going to My voice is a little, throat is a little sore, kind of post nasal drip. Something is happening. So, yeah, um, it's gonna be a little bit softer. I'm gonna be a little bit softer today in the use of my voice. Um, so, um, just a few things. Last week, I went over. Most of you at this point should have gotten a progress report of some kind. CUNY wants us to do that twice a semester. The first time I kind of felt it was a little too early. This time around, I really wanted to make sure people knew where they were and where they stood. So now that we are sort of on course and coming down to the last few weeks, um, I'm going to get back into giving feedback. What I told my other two classes that I have on Friday is that I am not going to close modules. I think it's for you all, it's 3, 4, and 5. I will not close those, or I won't close modules until Monday, November 23rd. So wherever we are at that point, I'm going to close modules. So right now they're still open. So there's some of you who have the opportunity to fix some of these zeros. I still have to go in and I think it's changing the dates on some. Now, if you've used your two attempts for the quiz, you're kind of out of luck with that. But I have to go fix those dates, and that I'll be able to do now that progress reports and those things are done. And then people have a very limited window to go in and make adjustments. So that's if your language mechanics checks are not done. Like I said before, the class was set up so that if you missed something, it wasn't meant so that you would be penalized and you would be hurt. But for many people, you've racked up so the first 5 modules each had about 4 assignments. So it's 20. And now we are in week 8, and some people only have about 10 assignments. And that's if you had to get a grade, you'd be failing. So all that to say, you have a window to attempt to make things up. And here's the thing, I don't know if I said it last week, but I will say it to you. Making up work it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, but from an educational standpoint, you actually kind of cheat yourself because you are trying to condense what you should have been doing little by little all along into a short period of time. And for the long haul, that does not benefit you. The quality of your work oftentimes is not as great. And these were small assignments. These weren't really huge. They may have taken a little time, but they weren't huge assignments. Yes, the lecture, that I am getting to that. So module 7, the recording, I did not post, and that's on me. So I'm going to get that posted. I just got caught up with, stuff. But I will get that posted. But this is the other thing too. I mean, I'm glad that somebody's asking about that, but listen, if you don't have the textbook, that's a problem. Okay? Now, I know some people just want to re-listen to the lecture, which I think is a good thing, and you should, and that's part of the reason why it's there. But some people are trying to get through this course without having bought the textbook. And I find that to be very problematic. That's not good practice. It's actually not ethical. Okay? It's not ethical. And moving forward, you need to think about that. You can't call somebody out if you yourself are not willing to do the things that are needed. So I'm just putting that out there. I know that people, for various reasons, and so really check yourself, because I'm not going through the entire every aspect of every chapter. Um, and I think that you just need to know that that's not really ethical to do that. It's not honest. Is it honest if you can't afford the textbook? Yes, that's honest. But there are ways to get it. And like I said, between the libraries and things like that, and PDF and ebooks and renting, you could have the textbook. And reading is important for you. You can't increase your vocabulary. You cannot improve your writing if you do not read. And I have not penalized people for their writing skills or their lack thereof. Okay, I've not penalized anyone. So, and by that, I'm just saying that if I structured the class differently, a whole lot of people would be in a different place, because the writing skills, which we're going to talk about today, aren't there. Okay. So and if I've told you that via an exit ticket, then you definitely should pay attention to that. You should definitely reach out to BMCC and the folks that deal with tutoring and things like that. That's why you're doing the language mechanics check, as a way to review and build up on those skills. Okay. Module 7 is going to get posted. Module 8 is going to get posted, which is what we're doing today. November 23rd, all of the previous modules are going to be closed. Okay? Please don't wait until November 22nd. Please don't wait until Monday at 9:30 a.m. because that's one of the first things I'm going to do that morning, is I'm going to turn off those modules. And also partly because I have to get your grades ready, right? You're going to want your grade when the semester is over. And I need time to get those things together. Okay? I'm not sitting by my iPad or my computer waiting for people to turn in work. And I need time in order to make sure that the things that you're asking for, the things that you want, and the things that you should have as a student, timely grades, etc., but they can be very hard for me to do when you have people who aren't turning in things on time. Okay. So with that, please don't forget group written project reports. I think maybe next week or so we'll start to, not group written, yes, your group written project reports are coming up in terms of handing them in. But then your individual live presentation, we're going to start to set up who's going to go on what week. Okay, so be thinking about that. It's the last 2 weeks of class. So start thinking about which week you would want to go. I'm going to share my screen now. So if anybody comes in, just have them, I guess, text me via the Remind app, or you can come off mute and just say somebody's trying to get in. All right. All right, so today we're focusing on email and other traditional tools. I'm just turning up my volume so you all don't have to strain to hear me. The objective is that you'll learn about traditional communication channels in the workplace and the positives and challenges for using each. Students will also learn best practices for communicating across various channels. Hold on one quick second. Let me just grab one thing. All right. Sorry about that. So one of the things when you are trying to strategically select a channel for communication, you need to think about the richness, okay? And the richness involves two considerations: the level of immediacy and the number of cues available. Let me give you an example. Prior to COVID, we had the opportunity to be in front of one another. And therefore, the level of immediacy in terms of our communication was pretty rapid. If we were in the classroom together, you'd be able to say something and I'd be able to respond to you immediately right there. But since COVID, we now have to communicate across technology or through technology. So you can ask me a question here in class, virtual space. You can send me an email. You can utilize the Remind app and text me. The other part is the number of cues available. If we were in person, some of my nonverbal cues, in addition to how I am speaking, would be available and contribute to the level of immediacy in my response to you. But since COVID, sometimes my nonverbal cues, in particular my facial expressions, are not always readily available. And neither is my tone of voice, because it is mediated, or I speak and it comes through the screen or your audio, and it is approximate, right? It's not the same as being in person. I'm sorry, I have to blow my nose. So immediacy relates to how quickly someone is able to respond and give feedback. And that's exactly what I just said in the example. Control, these are all of the things that you need to be thinking about in terms of when you select a channel for communication. Control. And this is the degree to which communications can be planned and recorded, thus allowing strategic message development. So think about it. Which channels allow for you to plan and record your message? Well, when you can plan and record your message, you are exercising control. And by that, I'm just saying that, in other words, before you send a text message or before you send an email, you can pause and reread your message to make sure that that message is what it is that you intend to send and say to the other party. Okay? And companies do this all the time, right? This is the commercials that we see. These are the billboards that we see. These are the advertisements that come into our mailbox or our inbox on email. Okay? They come in, so they exercise control. So there's a whole lot of planning, editing, and revising of these messages before they go out. Of course, I just mentioned planning. So planning implies that the communication can be tightly drafted, edited, and revised, rehearsed, and otherwise strategically developed before delivery. So, notice a few things here, right? Tightly drafted. What does that mean, tightly drafted? That means they drafted, and the draft might be they might go through several drafts. They don't do one and done. It's not a one and done. I write it one time and then I turn it in and it's over. No, they write it, they draft it, they go through, they edit, they revise it, they rehearse it, and they might go back and they may draft it several times before they edit, revise, and rehearse it. But the point is that this process isn't just a one and done thing. They don't just do it one time. It may go through several drafts, right? Before, the message is sent out. And this is so that it's very intentional, it's very direct. It's intended for a particular audience or group or multiple audiences or group. And that's why they're also being very careful. Okay. The other thing we have to think about too is that the messages we send nowadays have a certain level of permanence. The extent to which the message can be stored, right, or saved, retrieved, and distributed to others. We see this, right, with in the politics that are happening as people are campaigning. If you ever just watch them, right, especially when they're talking about negatively about an opponent, you see anything that person has done that has been recorded or stored, or, they're able to retrieve it, right, and distribute it to others. So there's a permanence when we, that we, the kind of permanence that is available for the messages we send is important. So we need to be strategic about the channel that we select for communication, because we may not want something to be permanent. But then again, sometimes there are many occasions in which someone may want it to be permanent. Here are a couple of other things to think about in selecting channels for communication. You want to look at the constraints, okay? The constraints. And these are the practical limitations, right? The practical limitations of coordination and resources. So, for example, many companies will have a department that deals with social media and internet usage, and they may have a protocol for how those messages are approved before they go out. So what will happen is a message will be drafted, and then it has to go sort of up the chain, as it were, and be approved by different people before it can be released. Now, sometimes that happens rapid fire, but sometimes it could be slowed, right? And so in thinking about the constraints, you have to, I'm sorry, hold on a second. Let me see if I can put this in here. Okay. Can somebody just come off mute and let me know that they hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great, awesome. My kids are starting to get loud in the background, so I had to put on my earpods. Yeah, that's the world we living in. I'm sorry if you can still hear them. Right, so constraints. So you want to think about, does the message have to be approved? What resources are needed? Oftentimes there's it's usually financial resources, but it doesn't always have to be financial resources. The resources, if they're financial, it usually means there's a budget, right? So think about Facebook ads, think about Instagram ads, think about if you're an entrepreneur and you have sort of a paid account, the costs, right? There's a budget for those things, right? So those are some of the things that you need to think about as it relates to constraints. Coordination, I kind of talked about that already, but again, it's the effort and timing that's needed to allow all the relevant people to participate in the development of a communication or of a message, right? Are there several people that have to approve it or have to sign off in order for a post to be allowed or a campaign to be done? And then, of course, and resources, which we've mentioned, but here's a more
Longer definition, it's the financial, it's the space, it's the time and other investments necessary to employ particular channels of communication. So one of the things that you may have noticed, and just in this week, for example, is that a lot of companies are have pivoted or made a slight directional change because they realize due to the pandemic, a lot of people are not going to be coming into stores physically, right? So now you have a lot of advertisements that are going out, maybe to your email, maybe you see it on TV, maybe you see it on your social media, that are trying to entice you to buy because they know that most people are going to be doing a lot more internet purchasing or purchasing via the web, right? And so many of them have spent a lot of time, money, and other resources to reach out to consumers to begin so that they don't lose out on that market, right? Christmas time is usually a huge time where people are purchasing, and that's usually happening in stores, or in past it's been in stores. But like I said, right now with what's going on, they realize that in order for them to perhaps stay afloat or straight survive, they've got to get people to start buying early. So there are all these discounts and things that are enticing you to spend your money early because A, they know more people are going to be buying online, um, and not coming into the stores. But again, it's showing you how, I'm trying to show you how, even as we are living and going through this particular period of time, um, many companies are pivoting, right? Trying to make sure that they still stay afloat by directing resources and time and selecting strategic channels for communicating to us, the consumers. Okay. So constraints, coordination, and resources. So the other part that's really huge, as it relates to selecting channels, is you have to decide: do you want the communication to be live, occurring in real time? Well, if you do, that's synchronous, right? It occurs in real time. People can give immediate responses to one another and engage in turn taking. But you can also select a channel that's asynchronous, which does not occur in real time. And it allows people to be a little bit more selective as to when they decide to pay attention to the message and respond, right? And that's sort of the way classes, even now, are set up, right? Some classes are synchronous, like ours, they're live. But then some classes have, or they may have a mix. Some are synchronous and asynchronous, some are completely asynchronous. Okay. So as you select a channel for communication, you have to decide whether or not you want it to be live or do you want it to be asynchronous. One of the reasons why I've talked about writing, and I've tried to not be, like I said, not penalizing people for writing skills, because I really want you to see how important writing skills are to your written communication. It is part of business communication. And I believe most of you, in order to take this class, you had to take a writing class and a speech class. So most people are going to assume that you know how to do certain things as it relates to written and spoken um, communication. Whether you do or do not is a whole nother issue. But if you continue on in your education, most professors are going to expect that you know how to do this. Two, they're not probably going to go over certain things. And three, you're going to be held accountable whether you know it or not. Okay. So one of the reasons why your writing skills are extremely important is because one of the traditional tools for business communication, especially over the last 20 years, is email. Okay. Email is the primary form of written business communication. And some of you, I'll be honest, your written communication is not. You got to work on it. Most analysts expect it to be the primary tool for at least the next 5 to 10 years in most companies. Okay. Now, for those of you who have work experience, you already know because you're doing it, you're living it, and you've had to step it up, right? You've had to figure out how to improve your writing so that you could write effectively to survive and exist in the workplace. But for those of us who may not be, may not have been in the working world or the working field, depending on what your position is, email is going to be huge. And so it's something that you need to start, getting right, like not working on, but literally start getting it right. And this is a good chapter. So here go some principles for effective emails. Use it for the right purposes, especially with work, right? It should go without saying, but use it for the right purposes. I'm going to be a little bit facetious, but don't try to use email to set up a date. Like, just don't. Okay? It sounds really silly, maybe for some people, but don't. Especially not your work email. Don't use your email for anything other than work. Let me say that again. Sounds very straightforward. It sounds like it makes sense. Do not use your work email for anything else other than work. Your work email is a tool, which means you don't own it. Yes, your name is in front of it. Your name, it might be your name at whatever company, but you don't own it. They issued that email address to you so that you could carry on the work of that particular company. And since it is a tool that they have given you, please know they have the ability to go and read it. Okay. And they don't need your permission. Okay. That email address that they issued you is a tool. It belongs to them. And believe it or not, whether they ever tell you or not, they can go into that email address and they can read it. Now, it doesn't mean that people will be doing that, but you need to know that people can. Okay. So always use it for the right purposes. Do not use it for any personal things. Don't use it to order anything, right? Unless it's work related and you've been given, you've been told that it's for, but do not use it to order anything personal. Don't order off Etsy. Don't order off the Gap. Don't order off anybody or anything. Do not use your work email for anything other than that. Ensure ease of reading, and you see you see next to it in red, help me help you. When you send in an email, especially if you're making a request, you need to make sure that the email is easy to read and understand. I have gotten numbers of emails and texts via Remind. Well, I don't understand what you're asking for. And it's frustrating, especially if you want the person to do something. You need to be clear in what you're asking. That's that phrase, help me help you. You want my help? Well, make it easy for me to help you. Tell me what it is that you want and make it easy for me to understand what it is that you're asking for. Okay? And we're going to look at an email from your text that will help you to hopefully get a little bit of a better picture of that. But anytime you are in the position of asking for something, requesting something, wanting somebody to donate, wanting someone to participate, wanting someone to do anything for you, even if you feel they have a responsibility, you're still making a request. Make sure that your written communication is clear and and easily understood, because if not, you're going to frustrate the person because they can't understand. You're going to delay them being able to respond to you, answering your question or answering the request that you've made. And then, believe it or not, your credibility goes down the window. Why? Because they're going to assume that somehow you are incompetent, that you don't have the you're not competent enough to put together an email to make a request. So help me help you. Make it make the email accessible, make it readable, make it legible so that they can understand. Another part of that is showing respect for time. You don't send again, I'm going to be facetious, but send a 5-page email. Like, you just don't. Okay. You might send, a 3 to 4 paragraph email, depending on what it is, but you want to kind of be intentional about that. Hold on one second. I have to stop because somebody's trying to get in. So you want to show respect for their time by, by making sure, again, that you're crafting an email that is, and it's not about length, okay? It's really about being clear, because if you ensure ease of reading, you technically are showing respect for time. You're getting to the heart of the matter. You have a greeting. You tell them why you're writing. You tell them what it is that you need them to do or ask them to do. You tell them, you give them a time frame in which you would like for them to respond or give you some type of confirmation or letting you know. And then you close with a greeting. But you show respect for their time by ensuring that there's an ease of reading. You also show respect for time by not making last minute requests, right? Oh, we need you to stay tomorrow, or work on Saturday, and it's Friday night. Nobody wants that. It's annoying. It's frustrating, right? So you want to show respect for time by, you know, again, ensuring the ease of reading, but also making sure that your request or whatever it is that you're asking for is also being done in a timely manner. And then you want to protect privacy and confidentiality. Know that anytime you send an email to someone, they have the ability, or whoever it is that they work for, have the ability to go into that email. And people have the ability to share stuff. Okay. Cybercrime is one of the biggest crimes that and it continues to increase because more people online and more people are doing things online. And just like you have people who are challenging in person, you have people online who have other goals. So try not to share information or share things. Protect the privacy and confidentiality of the emails that you receive. Don't share. If you are going to CC stands for carbon copy for you millennials and Gen Z people. Stands for carbon copy. The reason why it stands for carbon copy is because back in the day, I think there's at least one person who probably knows about this. Back in the day, that's how they did copies. They'd have a carbon copy, and it's a paper that had. Okay, love you too, Mama. It's a carbon copy. Literally, it's an ink, and you'd press down on it. Some of you, maybe even BMCC, still use some of that stuff. I don't know. And then you'd press down on it, and it would make a copy on the other side, on the underside, and then you'd have the copy, and then you'd have the original. If you ever saw your parents' checkbook or somebody's checkbook from maybe 15 or 20 years ago, that's how copies of checks, right, were there. It was that carbon copy. Um, so yeah, some other principles: respond promptly. Um, Anywhere from 24 to 72 hours, that's 1 to 3 days, is usually pretty decent in responding to an email. Um, you can sort of deduct Saturdays and Sundays because not everybody is on email and checking email. Um, Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Oh man, how long has it been? Has it been a while?
Yes.
Oh wow. Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that no one could hear me. Okay. So let me try to share my screen again. So did anybody hear me talk about the respond promptly part or no?
We only heard the beginning.
You cut
Okay,
off
so
after saying 20 a day to 24 hours to, I think you said 72 hours.
yes, okay. Yeah, that's on the screen. Okay. All right. So I'll start from maintain professionalism and appropriate formality. Okay, so well, I'll review respond promptly. So yes, 24 to 72 hours is seen as pretty much, respectful and prompt. You can get away with 24 to 72 hours. Sometimes that does not include the weekend, and sometimes it doesn't. So, for example, if it's an email that comes through on a Friday night, by that Tuesday or so is when you should respond, because Saturday and Sunday technically are not business days. And sometimes you can actually even put in your email, especially your work email, that only responds to emails during business hours or something of that nature, so that people know if they send you an email on a Friday afternoon, you're not probably going to respond until Monday or Tuesday. So those are little things that you can include so people know to not look for an email from you. But 24 to 72 hours, 1 to 3 days is pretty decent in terms of response time. Now, maintain professionalism and appropriate formality. So that's pretty much, it's a greeting. Okay, it's greeting people. It's using their title. I grew up in a household where you said good morning. Um, when I was a public school teacher, I greeted my students. I said, good morning. Hi, how are you? And it seems really simple, but there are people who don't necessarily follow that, and they just start talking. And it's just like, you need to, start with a greeting, start with a hello, before you just start rattling off stuff or making a request. Formality, if they have a title, dear so and so, or good afternoon, Vice President such and such. I'm from the blah 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 department, and we're looking to hold a workshop, and we'd like for you to come and speak to the team about increase in sales, something like that. I'm just kind of coming off the cuff. And that's something that again, you're demonstrating professionalism and formality, so that's about greeting and using titles, um, and sort of just honoring somebody's humanity, right? You don't want somebody to just walk up to you and start talking. You would want them to say hello or good afternoon or how are you doing and how can I help you. Think about when you are in the store or in certain places, how salespeople come up to you. They usually greet you, right? They're greeting you, and then they may launch into their pitch, of some kind. You want to also manage your emotions effectively. People are going to make you mad. People are going to, piss you off, but you want to be cautious. You want to be strategic in your emotion, especially how it might come through in email or in written forms. One, because that email can always be shared and used against you, unfortunately. But the other thing is, and what's most important is you don't want the issue to be dismissed, right? And sometimes when we're upset, we can the issue can get obscured, right? It's not readily visible. We can't really tell what it is because we're just so consumed with our emotion. And that's why it says manage emotion effectively. So what that does not mean, and what I am not advocating, is that you can't feel what you feel, right? And I'm not saying that you can't be upset. But what I want you to be mindful of is that sometimes people will attempt to goad you or make you upset in an attempt, and you don't want the issues or the situation to be dismissed because someone was upset or you were upset. So you want to be strategic. Sometimes it might take sitting down and writing out how you really feel, and then burning the piece of paper or ripping it up, and then starting with a clean slate so that you can address what the issues are. I've written on occasion certain emails that are straight to the point. It causes me to zero in and be very critical, and so that I get to the heart of the matter very, very quickly. So I allow my frustration to fuel me to be very specific, to be very technical, um, and to show. And they still might know that you're upset and know that you're bothered, but if you're able to zero in on the issues and point out the facts and deal with the facts, then they can't dismiss it. Okay. The other thing is you want to avoid distractions. Okay. Try to avoid distractions. Why? Well, because when you're trying to write and compose an email, you want to have all your faculties available. We've all probably hit send when we didn't intend to, and it's just not good practice, right? Be present with the email, develop the email, and then send it. Because if not, you'll have typos, you'll have, misspelled words or words used incorrectly. And believe it or not, one time is okay, but multiple times that starts to say that you're incompetent. People start doubting your competence. Okay. And here, as you can see at the bottom, I have where it says recognize triggers, right? Recognize your triggers. Recognize when people do stuff that triggers you to make you feel a certain way, right? And then also recognize when someone is attempting to, make you upset, because that happens too, right? And you want to be mindful. Don't put anything in writing that you don't want being repeated or used or brought up again. Okay, because those kinds of things have a way of resurfacing. Talked about it already. Use email for the right purposes. Email has few constraints, right? Few constraints, high control. Few constraints, it doesn't cost much. It doesn't take a whole lot of coordination. You can control it, meaning you can take the time that you need to think carefully about what you're saying and how you want to say it. And then there is a permanent record, unless you delete it. There's often a permanent record. And even when you delete it, trust me, it can still be dug up, especially once you send it. Somebody will be able to pull it out again. So email is inappropriate for sensitive or emotional tasks, right? In addition to facilitating discussions. If you need to have a discussion, do a phone conference, do a video conference. It's inappropriate for sensitive or emotional communication tasks. Again, don't start giving a long spiel about, any personal issues via email that you might be having. It's inappropriate for that. You don't want that to be out and about, right? In these, and I'll speak in the vernacular, in these internet streets, right? Not internet, but internet streets. So you just want to be mindful of the kinds of conversations that you do, and the kinds of communication you have. Like, again, especially with your work email or an email that you use for business, right? And that's also for you entrepreneurs, right? Who have, um, I forgot, this director, someone I knew who was in a director position. She didn't have a work email, the establishment, unfortunately. I think they had an email, but she used her personal email. And I remember the first time she gave me the email, it was like Glow Kitty 78. And I was like, what? And I was just like, come on, lady, like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, this is not the kind of email address you want to have. So if you got a Glow Kitty 78 email address, don't use that for any business, please. Don't use it. Get another more professional email address, even if it's just your name. Whatever your first initial is and your last name. Get a professional email address. And by professional, what I'm saying is that if you are an entrepreneur, or even as a student, have a professional email, a decent email that you can put on your resume, right? Because you're not going to put your job email on your resume, especially if you're looking to leave that company. So just be mindful, use your email for the right purposes. So we're going to look at, in order to ensure ease of reading, you want to provide a short descriptive subject line. Okay, and we're going to look at an example. You want to keep your message brief yet complete, right? So when people say, well, how many pages and how many pages, it's not really about how many pages. It's about, is your message complete? Have you completed the task? Have you addressed all of the situations or all of the issues that need to be addressed? Not necessarily about length. You want to clearly identify expected actions. So what action do you want the person to take or engage in after reading your email? A lot of times with blogs, they call it CTA, which is call to action. So think about the blogs and the call to action. What action do you want the person reading your email to take after? Provide a descriptive signature block, and we're going to talk about that. I'm going to show you that. And then use attachments wisely. If you need to have them, then have them. If you don't, then don't. This is in your text, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. I'm just going to draw your attention to this right here. So basically, the time spent answering emails, reading and writing emails per week by managers is about 30%. So 30, 30, 30, and 10 equal 100. So almost a third of their time is spent reading and writing emails. This is the reason why your writing skills need to be on point, because a third of your time. So if you think about it, let's say you spend 8 hours a day working. You might spend 7, you might spend 9. And some of you might, depending on your kind of job, you might actually do 12-hour shifts. Fine. The whole point, I'm just using this number, 2, 4, 6, 8, a third of that, right, is about 2+ hours, right? Which is they got 2 to 5 hours. So in an 8-hour workday, a fourth, or at least a fourth, and probably 3 hours, right? So almost a third to a fourth of your day is spent just reading and writing emails. Okay. That's not little. Okay. That's not little. Especially if it's your working time, that's not little. If you want to think about it, you get to work, let's say by 9 a.m. If you spend the first 2 hours of your day or 2.5 hours of your day just reading and writing emails, you don't really start doing work until after lunch. Because 9, an hour 10, another hour 11, and a half an hour 11:30, right? You might do something, perhaps a phone call or two, or make a plan for the second half of your day. You go to lunch at 12, you come back at 1, and then from 1 to 5, you actually quote unquote do work. So that's not, a small portion of your day. That's pretty much almost half of your working day. So here is a less effective email. We have somebody's name. The subject just says agreement, and the attached document says terms. I don't know about you, but I have 3 email addresses. And if somebody sends me an email that looks like this, a lot of times I'm not even going to open it. Not right away. And why? It's because it's non-descriptive. I don't know what it is unless I'm looking for it. I don't know what this is. It tells me that I'm going to have to do a lot of work to figure out what's going on. And I may not want to do that. Or I may not have time to do that. Right? So it's not an effective email. And this is just the beginning part. Now let's look here. I wear glasses, as most of you know, and some of y'all wear glasses too. So when you have text and it's all bunched up like this, and there's no paragraph breaks, there's no highlighting, there's no underline, there's no italicized or bolded words, it's hard to read, right? Your eyes just go, oh my God, do we have to? So you want to space all of this stuff out. I'm not even going to talk about what's being said in here. You can actually go back and read that. And then based off what they're talking about, this signature block is really not helpful. There's no greeting. They just start by saying, great to talk to you this morning. There's nothing there. So I know for me, I see something like this 9 times out of 10, I'm not even opening it, at least not right away. I may come back to it later. But a more effective email, we can see in the subject, it's very clear. Revised terms of sponsorship for the literacy fair. The attached document says Sunrise sponsorship terms proposal. So you know what the document is, you know what the subject of the email is. There's a greeting. She just said hi, but that's fine, right? And then when you organize your information, such as is done here, you make it easy for the person to zero in and read, and then perhaps, honor the request that you're making. Okay. So now the signature block makes sense, because now we know that it's a credit union that's putting on a literacy fair, and they're asking, right, for this particular person to sponsor, to donate money, to donate time, right? And so they need to make it easy for Stephanie. Hanise needs to make it easy for Stephanie to participate. They want her money, they want her sponsorship, they want her time, they want what she brings to the table. They need to make sure that Stephanie is not struggling trying to figure out what they're asking for. This is in your text, so you can go and look at it, take a closer look there. Show respect for others' time. This was already mentioned, but again, here's some more specific information about how to do that. You want to select message recipients carefully. This is not you get an email, he gets an email, she gets an email, everybody gets an email. No email chains. You want to be careful. Who needs to know? Who needs to get this email? And those are the recipients that get the email, not everybody. You want to try to, as best you can, provide timelines and options. Everybody may not be able to comply with what you're asking, perhaps exactly when you want. So provide some options. Be careful. This is a big one. Be careful about using a priority flag. I actually hate when people use the priority flag. I actually don't use a priority flag. So what I would do, instead of using the priority flag, because what happens is when you start to use the priority flag over and over and over again, makes people not want to open your email. Everything she sends is priority. I don't want to look at that. Everything he sends is a priority. He always says it's priority. It ain't a priority. I don't want to look at that. So don't use priority. If anything, I would be cautious, but I would put in the subject line urgent or time sensitive. I would put it next to the subject. I would put it in the subject line next to the title of the email, time sensitive or urgent. That would be good because you're not going to use that for every email that you send. But it's easy to just move your mouse and click priority, priority, priority. And what happens is people are going to just be turned off. It's like crying wolf. Everything is important. Everything needs to be done now. Everything needs to be answered now. And people don't like feeling like you're pulling on them in that way. You want to also let others know when you will take longer than anticipated to respond or take action. Listen, we all know that this current social reality that we're dealing with right now has placed a lot of demand on us in ways that we did not anticipate. And so we need to not only request grace, right, from people, but we also need to be able to offer it to people, right? It's really sad when people demand that they get all of the leniency, but then don't want to extend any grace to other people. It's very selfish, very hypocritical. So people will be understanding if you communicate that you need some more time. Hey, listen, just wanted to let you know that I know I plan to have it done, and I said I was going to have it done by this date, but in actuality, it's looking like things are challenging, and I may not be able to finish it for another 2 or 3 days. But communicate, let people know what's going on. Don't let them come to you and ask, and then you want to offer them the story. Don't let people have to come to you to get the story. Offer it, tell them what's going on. That also shows respect for people's time. Avoid contributing to confusing and repetitive email chains. Like I said, just don't do it. Don't send them, don't participate in them. Yeah, none of that. So, we've all seen email chains or been on an email chain. They've decreased significantly, but there are still some. Now people are doing it on Facebook, right? Send this to 12 people or WhatsApp, right? They do it on those platforms, but it's slowed down on email. So just to show you how greetings and use of names are important. This is also in your text, but just as you can see right here, no greeting, percentage of emails with no greeting, it means it high, low morale. The low morale is high. Also, the no greeting, it's also low. When they use a greeting word only, they're about the same. Name only, you see the morale start to increase, right? But when you use a greeting word and a name, the low morale starts to decrease and the high morale starts to increase. And this is where you want to be. You greet somebody and use their name. You're going to increase the morale and increase the likelihood of them wanting to read future emails from you. Again, maintain professional and appropriate professionalism and be appropriate. So you want to avoid indications that you view email as casual communication. So you don't try to set up a date or send out a co-workers party and gathering thing, which actually might be okay, but you just might want to find some other way of doing it. You just want to be mindful, right? Apply the same standards for spelling, punctuation, and formatting you would for other written documents. So for email, the same way that you would write a paper or that you would type in a Word document, adhering to rules or standards of spelling, punctuation, and formatting. That's how you also want to do with email, okay? You also want to adhere to standards of spelling, punctuation, and formatting, just like you would in a Word document, just like you would if you were writing a paper or an essay, okay? And of course, use greetings and names. Sorry about that. So again, as it relates to managing emotion and civility, a couple of things you need to know. The neutrality effect. Recipients are more likely to perceive messages with an intended positive emotion as neutral. Okay? They're likely to perceive messages with an intended positive emotion as neutral. But the negativity effect is that they're likely to perceive messages that are intended as neutral as negative. So remember I talked about triggers, right? Some people will send communication with the intent of exciting or fanning the flames or instigating a situation. So emails or other digital communications with hostile intentions characterized by words of profanity, obscenity, and insults that inflict harm to a person or an organization. Those are things that fan the flames, right, of challenge and discord. And you want to be mindful of those kinds of emails. Cyber silence, non-response to emails and other communications. People do this too. They just don't respond to your email. They just don't respond to any communications that you send out. Not a good look. So there's also cyber incivility. And this is the violation of respect, right, and consideration in an online environment based on workplace norms. So your workplace is going to have a set of norms, a set of procedures, a set of protocols, right, and things that they will expect you as an employee to abide by. Unfortunately, you have people who are not civil people in person. But then also, even online, there is increased incivility, or what they have termed cyber incivility. And cyber incivility can be both active and passive. Most people, here go some examples of active and passive. I'm not going to study this too much, but I just want you to see. So here goes active. Somebody said something hurtful. Made demeaning or derogatory comments, used emails to say negative things that they wouldn't say to your face, put you down, or was condescending to you in some way through email. So here's these are active email examples of active email incivility. Now here are some passive email incivility instances. They don't respond to your emails at all. They do not acknowledge receipt of your email. They used email discussions that would require face-to-face dialogue, right? Y'all know how we do. Y'all know how some of y'all do, right? You send a text message when you really need to have a phone conversation. Use emails for time-sensitive messages. In other words, instead of coming to you to address a situation or an issue that is time-sensitive, they send you an email. And really, when they do that, the hope is that you are not going to see it and or respond in time. And then that way it could compound the situation further. And then, of course, they would say it was your fault. Okay, so these are active and passive ways. We can reinterpret things in order to help us be a little bit more open to perhaps the ways in which we could be making assumptions, right? So we interpret to adjust our initial perceptions by making more objective, more fact-based, and less personal judgments and evaluations. So instead of readily just assuming that they meant to leave us out or somehow disrespect us, what we can do is try to say, okay, are there other reasonable explanations or plausible explanations for the situation to happen as it has? It doesn't mean that your first inclination is not necessarily a right one, but just wanting you to think about possibilities. And then relaxing, right? Just relaxing. Release and overcome anger and frustration so that you can make a more rational and less emotional response. So that you can respond and be professional and demonstrate that you have the skills to do what needs to be done, and that you do not allow people to distract you from your purpose and the plan and the task at hand. And then, if it's possible, when it's possible, try to diffuse the situation, right? Avoid the escalation of tension, right? Remove the tension to focus on work objectives. I'm not going to I'm not going to spend any time on this. This is in your book. I'm looking at the time and I want to be mindful of that. But you can see here is a less effective response to an angry email. So you should go into your text and you should read this. Okay. Yeah. And then here is a more effective response. And I am pausing so that when I post it, you'll be able to pause it and read it. Instant messaging in the workplace, I'll be honest with you. I mean, some of you may see this, but I can't say that I've seen it too much. But there might be some positions in some industries that use instant messaging in the workplace. So it's a relatively new and undeveloped form of communication in the workplace. And attitudes toward it definitely vary. So it can be considered impersonal, uninteresting, rude, intrusive, or inadequate. I think that initially there may have been some places and some industries that may have used it. I cannot say that it's something that's popular. I'm not saying that it can't become popular, but at least I know in academia it's not popular at all. And I don't think that it's popular at all in corporate either. I think they stick to email as the tool, the primary tool that they use. However, if you are using instant messaging in the workplace, you want to evaluate the meta message of instant messaging. You want to use it for simple and brief conversations, not major or important decisions. You want to make sure your tone is positive, supportive, and appropriately fun. You don't ask questions. You can get answers to yourself. And then just be careful about abbreviated language, emoticons, acronyms, and emojis, because if it's work, it still needs to resemble and feel like the workplace. So they use 2 examples. They show someone using instant message to show support, which is nice, right? And there's even an emoji here, and it's appropriate. So some other things to avoid and this is just generally speaking, try to avoid these things, but especially with instant messaging. Avoid sarcasm and jokes, because oftentimes they may not translate exactly how you think they might translate. You want to avoid rescheduling meeting times or places. Last minute changing and things like that. Consider turning off sound alerts for incoming messages. You want to make sure you identify yourself. You want to end the I am exchange. It's not an open dialogue that continues to go on and on and on. And then you want to avoid personal I am instant messaging during work hours, especially again if you have a work any personal any personal things you want to not do during work. And then you want to avoid sending instant messages about work after work hours. Some people need to have those very clear boundaries about this is work and this is not. So try to honor that, okay? Establish rules with your colleagues for instant messaging during meetings. Again, usually your place of employment, depending on how big or small it is, will have something in place, a protocol in place. And if they do, follow it. If you are on a team and you are in a position to develop a protocol, then you develop the protocol. But more than likely, they'll have some kind of protocol there. Here's an example of some mixed or mismatched, sorry, I can't speak today, mismatched messaging. I'm just going to zero in here. So that great thanks, I know that's how people write, especially when you're texting, but don't do that for work, okay? NP, I know that means no problem, right? I'm buried with other, it's actually W/with. But don't do those things in any type of work documents, documents or communication. Don't do quote unquote social media shorthand. Okay, not acceptable. And you can read about an effective one. So check digital messages a few times each day at designated times. Here they say 4 to 5. Know what works for you. I know that I do check at least my personal email several times, and then my work email, I also check it a couple of times. And wean yourself off checking your mobile devices constantly. Sometimes it's something that our minds need to just rest, right? And we can't rest if we're always on a device or looking at something on a device. Develop strategies to manage your inbox. I know I typically will go in periodically and just delete promotions and other kinds of emails that come in. Use rich channels such as face-to-face and phone conversations to accomplish a task completely. Having a good old conversation with somebody can actually help bring things to a close versus leaving them open and dangling in the air, so to speak. And the reason why face-to-face and phone conversations are rich are, if you remember what we talked about right at the beginning, it's about immediacy and richness, right? You get the immediacy and the richness of the communication, and it becomes really clear. And that's the reason why these channels are considered to be rich. You get immediacy of the communication. It's rich You can experience and know what the person is thinking and feeling as they respond to you. Reply immediately only to urgent messages. Sometimes there will be urgent messages that you must respond to immediately, and you need to do so. But don't try to respond immediately to everything, because you won't, because it's not necessary. And sometimes you might need just to have the time to think. Avoid unnecessarily lengthening an email chain. Use automatic messages to help people know, when you're not going to be available. Schedule and plan your phone calls. Ensure quality audio. Open with a warm greeting. Good afternoon. How are you? Good. Use their name. Good afternoon, Josiana. How are you doing? You want to make the person, happy to hear from you, right? After a brief small chat, direct the conversation to the issues at hand. So I'm calling you today because we have to make some decisions about who is going to fill the position of blah, blah, blah. And we would like your input, right? Speak with a pleasant, enthusiastic voice, not one in which you don't want to be bothered. Because people feel that, right? They feel it. Oh, she don't want to be bothered, or she's annoyed, or he's annoyed. And when people feel that, it makes them not want to communicate with you. Share conversation time equally. Another way of saying that is share airtime, or share the mic, meaning the microphone. Don't monopolize the whole conversation. Don't do all of the talking. Why? Because people are going to not want to talk to you. Apply the rules of active listening and avoid multitasking. We've had those conversations when the person is just going, uh-huh, 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 yeah, uh-huh. And it's to make you think they're listening when they're not, right? Take notes on important points and summarize next steps at the end of the call. And a lot of times this is really for your benefit. It ain't about the other person necessarily. It's really for you. It allows you to be on task and know what you're doing, and gives you comfort because you're doing your job to the best of your ability. Close with appreciation. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I really appreciate the time. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Take good care. Bye-bye. Right? And follow up on any of the agreements that you make. If you say, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, do your best to do it. If you run into problems, if it's going to be delayed, let the people know it's going to be delayed. And try to do that sooner rather than later. Something else that you need to know, and I'm just going to spend a very brief moment. See, time spent speaking on the phone per week. Here we are. 30%. So 30% of your time is spent reading, and I'm writing shorthand now, and writing emails. Another 30% is spent speaking on the phone. And then you have another 30%, or rather, actually just, you have another 40%, right, of work, right? And that gets you your 100. So 2/3 of your day is spent talking on the phone and reading and writing and responding to emails. That's half your day. If you haven't seen this, I'm sure that you will at some point. It's just a sample meeting request and agenda for a phone call. I'm gonna enlarge it for a second. So here you can see when, where, and who. It gives you an option of saying yes, maybe, or no. And then here goes the agenda, right? There's about 4 questions, 4 points to be addressed. And, you know the date. And you see this is a conference call. So I'm not going to spend time on that one. You can go and read up on that one. When you participate in a group voice or video call, practice using the technology beforehand. That's just good practice. Use your webcam effectively. Use interactive tools wisely. As you can see, one of the interactive tools I use is my pen, right? Because I circle things, I draw things. I do that to kind of help engage and be specific and help me to bring your attention to certain things. Start the call with purpose and take charge. You don't want to be sitting on screen for a long period of time. So you want to kind of just, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking out the time. I hope you all are doing well. We've got this task before us. I think we can get this accomplished. So let's dive in and then go there, especially if you're in charge of leading, right, that particular call. Follow the guidelines of effective virtual meetings. You've gotten that information before. So here we are finally at the end. You understand that there are trade-offs of richness, control, and constraints with choosing a communications channel. Writing effective emails are important. I cannot urge you all enough to please look at these charts in this particular section, but just in general, read the book. Like I said, even if you just read half of each chapter, that would be beneficial for you. Because I'm stopping the screen for a second because somebody's telling me they got kicked out. Going back to share the screen again. Writing effective emails. Yeah, you can't improve your writing unless you're reading. And the quizzes are only 5 questions. But if you struggle with completing 5 questions in 30 minutes, then that says one of 2 things. It says that you're not reading, or it says that you're reading and you're not understanding. Everything that those questions are coming straight from the text, but what I do is I try to expound upon and make tangible some of that information, make it accessible to you, but that does not negate you reading it. Watch your emotion in online communications. Be mindful. It does not mean that you don't get to feel what you feel. It just means that you need to think about how you are expressing yourself and make sure that your emotions are not getting the better of you such that the issues at hand get obscured. If you are using instant messaging in the workplace, you want to make sure that you're using it effectively. You want to make sure that you're being intentional about your usage of it. You are not using it for personal reasons or communicating highly personal information through it. Know that people can become overloaded with digital messaging. And you can become overloaded with digital messaging, and you need to be aware as to what those triggers are and to use digital messaging appropriately. Know that phone conversations and video conversations are rich. those oftentimes are the methods that need to be used, and not email and not instant messaging, especially when you need to actually hash out certain kinds of have certain kinds of conversations and go over certain details. It is better to do them via phone or video conference, phone conversations or video conferences. Okay. All right, folks, we are at the end of this. I don't know if people have any questions as it relates to this, what we just did. Okay. If you don't have any questions, Module 8 is open. Okay. You only have an exit ticket and a quiz. In the meantime, you are still working on your group written report and your live presentation, individual presentation. Okay.
Pretty interesting.
Yep. All right. So I'm going to hang out here to deal with any individual questions people might have. I am going to post 7. I am going to make sure that I change the dates for, I think it's for you guys, it's 3 and 4 and 5 were the issue. I thought I fixed them, but I'm going to go back and double check again. And then I'll let you know via Remind app for sure, because now all that other stuff that I had to do with progress reports and getting up to speed on what has been done thus far across all the classes is done now. So I'll go in and change those. And reminder, I am closing modules 3 to wherever we are on Monday, November 23rd. And they will not be reopened. So at any point that you can reverse any of those zeros, you would want to do that. Okay. All right. Have a good rest of the day, good rest of your weekend. And I will see you next week.
Thank you, Professor. Have a good day.
You too. Take care. Then you need to talk? Okay. That's not.